Malik Yawmiddin or Malik Yawmiddin, they're both correct, right? But he said, if somebody goes Malaka, right? Now this here, he has squished it together, right? Where now there was no idgham in the ahkam of tajweed, where he has mixed letters together, then this makes it invalid. Oh, or ma la yadgham, or when there is an idgham and he doesn't make the idgham. Huh? Ar-Rahman, he says Al-Rahman. Right? Can you make Al-Rahman? La. You know, when we give the Shahada, we say Ashhadu an la ilaha. All these people, you say the Shahada wrong. It's Ashhadu an la ilaha. La. And here, learn the ahkam before you come correct us. So, in the Fatiha, when somebody either does an idgham when there is no idgham, they mix letters when they shouldn't be, or when there's letters that should be put together in a way and they don't do it. In all three of these categories now, the one who cannot recite Al-Fatiha at all correctly, and he skips lines. And I've prayed in masajid, big masajid, in other countries, and the imam skipped an ayah in Al-Fatiha, nobody corrected him. And you're like sitting in the back going like, am I crazy or is everybody else crazy? And after Salah, you skipped the whole ayah in Al-Fatiha, and they're like, Wahhabi, get out of here. Right? So, in those situations, or in situations where they in Al-Fatiha crash letters together that shouldn't, or don't that should, in all three of these, the salah behind such a person is not valid. أو يبدل حرفا, or they change a letter out. Now, again, you're learning, don't jump where you don't know how to jump. Right? Sometimes there's difference of qira'at. Sirat, zira. Right? Now, this is not that you're mixing up the letter. There is a different way to pronounce mutawatiran ala nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, from the accepted qira'at, from the ahruf al-sab'a and so on. So sometimes it is acceptable. Sometimes you may feel that the letter is not right, but maybe you're wrong, right? Be careful, right? Maybe it's not perfect, but it's within the acceptable range. But if somebody says, for example, Rahman, I've heard this. Rahman, Rahman, right? Now here, they've changed the ha into a kha, very clearly. Not that their ha is not deep enough or this or no, they changed the letter out. Here, it also invalidates the salah. Or somebody who makes major mistakes where it changes the meaning. Mistakes that change the meaning. Let's say if you say غير المغضوب عليهم أو عليهم. This is the difference of Quran. It doesn't change the meaning. It does not change the meaning. It's still upon them, right? But if you say lahum, instead of alayhim, lahum, not on them, for them, that changes the meaning. The Quran lak or alayk, not the same thing, right? So here, if such mistakes are made, this type of person also, salah behind them is not acceptable, illa bimithlihi. This is a very interesting aspect of it. Except for others are the same way. Okay? Let's say you go to a country, not trying to mention anybody in particular, but they make the dad into zwad. Maghzubi, wala zaleen. And they are qurra. They're a'imma in masajid and madaris, and they're like, wala zaleen. And you're like, dad? No? So, right? Now here, it is the responsibility of that imam that he recites it correctly. And if me and you go pray behind somebody like that, and we may not be ulama, but we know enough that this is not there is no zwad in the Arabic language, right? Not that I know of. Yeah? It's not from any of the qira'at, Shaykh Dursa, right? Just making sure, right? But there are entire regions of the Muslim world that pronounce it that way, and they will fight you if you say it otherwise. Our salah behind that imam is invalid. We have to repeat our salah. Sorry, guys. Right? But if there's an ignorant person there who also doesn't know any better, and the whole masjid doesn't know any better, then khalas, what can you do? You cannot bring qurra unknowingly from other countries. Right? I mean, like, You go to a village and that's all they've been taught, then the one who should have learned has the responsibility of the sin. But the people's salah is valid because they don't have a choice. If they know better, they need to either repeat the salah or go to a Ahlul Hadith masjid, or go to another masjid or do something different. But if they don't know, they're all like this, right? Sometimes you go to a farmer area and 10 guys get together to go make salah and none of them recite al-Fatiha correctly. So here, because they're ajiz, they don't have the ability, we say their salah is valid. But for those who know, then salah behind somebody like this is invalid. And then the muallaf he says, in qadara ala islahihi. If they're able to correct it, la tasih salatuhu. If they're able to correct and they don't, then the salah is not valid. But if they don't know, if they're all ignorant, then khalas, their salah is acceptable. Tayyib. وَالتُّكْرَهُ. Now we get to another category. What is that? Right? What did we say earlier? La tasih. What is haram? What is unacceptable? What is not valid? Those type of salah. Now we get into what is makruh, karah. Of the Imam al-Lahan. Al-Lahan is somebody who constantly makes mistakes, but those mistakes are not major enough to invalidate the salah. Okay? Now, if somebody can recite al-Fatiha upon its minimum correct pronunciation, right? Meaning they didn't switch letters out, they didn't change the meaning and so on, salah behind them is valid. And their salah is valid. Even if they make 100 mistakes in the rest of the recitation, the salah is valid. Right? But if somebody constantly and continuously messes with letters, makes mistakes, then it's best to put somebody else in front for salah. There is karaha here, right? Now, you may not have that ability, right? You may go live in another state and the masjid you go to doesn't have a qari and they don't have an imam and they have one guy that leads salah and his Fatiha is correct but he makes mistakes the whole time. Now, your salah is valid. You make your salah, you try to give your nasihah, that's it. But if you go and the imam is reading al-Fatiha and in it he says Siratul Ladina or something like this, where now i'raban you've changed from mansoob to marfu' and there is issues or so on, then if it is not from the acceptable qira'at, sometimes i'rab are also different between the qira'at, and if it is something that invalidates the meaning and so on like this, then your salah is invalid. But if the imam makes mistakes, your salah is valid. But this is makruh. Why would you want to put somebody who is constant in their mistakes? Right? Imam make mistakes. We don't want to be like imam makes a mistake in Taraweeh or something and khalas, you're like makruh salah behind you, khalas, I'm out. Right? Everybody makes mistakes. I make a mistake, you make mistakes, don't get too happy, right? But if somebody has a constant issue with it, then there is karaha. Tayyib. Or fafa or tamtam. Now these are interesting words here. Al-fafa or al-tamtam have no meaning in Arabic by itself. And that's why some people, they're like, I'm just going to pick up a translation of a book and read it, like a fiqh book. So good luck with that, because you're not going to understand it. Okay? If you don't understand the salahat and terminologies, you're not, even if you speak Arabic. Okay? Here, the meaning here of al-fa is somebody who stutters with the letter fa. Tamtam is somebody who stutters with the letter ta. Okay? And these terminologies were developed because these letters were the ones that people would have a lot of problem when they have stutters. They would get stuck in that, or like that. You hardly ever see anybody getting stuck with like, Could happen, but these letters developed in Arabic language because of its common use. But what is the meaning? If somebody stutters in their salah, salah behind them is permissible. Why? Because not their fault. Right? Somebody has a stuttering problem. But if you have somebody who doesn't have that, then there's karaha in having them constantly lead salah, to be the imam and so on, because the recitation of the Quran will not be wadih, clear. Right? So if somebody has a stutter and you're at the park, you're going somewhere and they lead salah once in a while, nothing wrong with that. But they should not be made as a regular imam. There is karaha there. Okay? And if there are people who don't stutter, then you should put them forward to lead the salah. Unless the brother who stutters is the only one that knows Al-Fatiha correctly or something, or the only one knows the ahkam of salah correctly. Those situations are there, but this is general. So how many of the karahat have we mentioned now? 3. Or if somebody does not pronounce the letter correctly, right? So we talked about earlier those who would change the meaning in Al-Fatiha. Okay? For example, in some cultures, I'm not going to mention which ones, the bod is made into a ta, right? Or the va is made into a ta, right? Tahir would become wahir, so on, right? In some cultures, the jeen is made into a geen. Not going to mention which cultures, don't guess, right? So it would be gama and masjid and so on. Some cultures, the qaf is made into a alif, right? So in these situations, if the person recites Al-Fatiha correct, and if they mess up in Al-Fatiha, then no. But if they recite Al-Fatiha correctly, and I've seen this. There used to be an imam, may Allah have mercy on him, he passed away. I'm not going to mention the masjid, but I used to go to that masjid. I used to live close to it. I don't live close to it anymore. And he was Egyptian. And when he would begin his salah in Al-Fatiha, he would be good. But a little bit into the Quran, he would start being, ganna, and everything would just start coming out. I remember he would give khutbah. In the beginning of the khutbah, he was good. But then, mashallah, when his accent would overpower him, he would be like, hug, like hajj. He'd be like, hug, hug. And I didn't know Arabic at the time. And I would be like, man, this brother really needs a hug. Like, I don't know what's going on, right? And with Jannah, it would become Ganna. And I don't know if you guys know Urdu, but in the Urdu language, Ganna means sugarcane. I don't know what in Fars. No. Huh? Ganna means sugarcane. And he would be giving khutbahs and stuff, Ganna, Ganna. I'd be like, man, this brother really likes sugarcane. I'm going to go get him some. So what happens here is if somebody mispronounces these words, then if the Fatiha is correct, their salah would still be correct, but it becomes makruh to make salah behind such a person. Tayyib. Or if there is al-ajnabiyya, وَأَكْثَرَ اللَّهُ رَجُلٌ مَا هُنَّ, if there is a woman and she is alone with a man or in a place where there is none of her mahram with her. Okay? Then here, this is considered khalwa unless there is separation and so on. Okay? For example, let's say a brother goes to school, university, right? And there is a Muslim sister that goes to the same school. And now he wants to go make salah, and him and her go to the salah, and it's just them. And even if I'm not saying they're praying inside, but she's behind him. But here, this is khalwa. This is not permissible. The khalwa aspect is haram, but even that salah is makruh. Salah is valid because you didn't invalidate any of the shurut or ahkam or arkan or wajibat of salah, but there is karaha here. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the hadith reported by Ahmad and Nasai and Ibn Majah and Ibn Hibban considered to be sahih, he said about the khalwa, if there is a man and a woman alone, the third with them is shaitan. So because of that, there is karaha. أو قوما, or there is a people أكثرهم يكره الإمام بالحق, or if there is a people and most of them hate the imam for a valid reason, then that salah is invalid, or it's makruh, it's karah, it's disliked. Salah is valid, but it's disliked. So there is a couple of things, and there is the hadith we'll get into, inshallah. Tirmidhi has mentioned, Tabrani, Ibn Abi Shayba, and we consider to be Hasan, where he's also said about the 3 that are disliked or in a state and so on. But what is the first understand the Surah Al-Mas'ala. Surah Al-Mas'ala is that if somebody is an imam, he's leading the people, and the majority, everybody will have somebody that dislikes him. I'm sure there's somebody sitting here that doesn't like me. I don't know any of you that like me, but it's okay. You don't have to like me, right? So there will be people, even if you're a Nabi, there's going to be somebody that doesn't like you. Even if you're a Sahabi, there's somebody that doesn't like you. Even if you're a Alim, a Wali of Allah, somebody won't like you. So it's not like you have to be loved by everybody, right? But if the majority of the congregation doesn't like this person, right? But now there is a shart here, bihaqqin, and they are on the haqq. Not that they don't like him because he's on the sunnah. Let's say or me or you or somebody goes to a place where the majority of the people are on bid'ah, and you're on the sunnah and they hate you. The majority doesn't like you. Why? Because you're on the haqq. Then no. Then the salah is, you should be the imam, and the salah is fine. But if they're on haqq, let's say the imam has a foul mouth, he cusses and smokes and does, and I'm not going to go to extreme cases, I'm going to go to like things that I've seen cases, right? And the people don't like him because of such a reason, right? So here, if he prays the salah correctly, and he doesn't invalidate any of the shurut, the salah is correct, but it is makruh, there is karah. Okay? But I want you to understand the two conditions. One is that this will be the majority of the people, not just individual. Sometimes individual just doesn't like you. Maybe you stepped on their shoe or something, I don't know. Right? That's not a majority, right? And sometimes the majority dislikes you, but you're on the haqq, right? That's also not the case. But if these two shurut are there, then it is something where it is makruh. For the sake of time, I'm going to try to cut down on the unusual cases. Tell you. The last subcategory here is what tasih, yani tasih, what is correct, right? La tasih we had earlier, salah is invalid. Then we had karaha. Now we had the salah is valid. Here we'll mention some of those categories and we'll mention some very interesting. And it's in the matan, I can't change it. If I offend anybody, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. Well, not really, but anyway. Wallah, I tell you, وتصيح, and it is correct. Imamatul walad zina. If somebody is born from zina, and there is a shart that will come in later, but first I'm just going to mention. Wal jundi, and the soldier. Right? Their salah is valid إذا سلم دينهما. If their deen is correct, meaning that they don't have any shortcoming in their own religious practices. Tayyib. What is the meaning? If somebody is born from zina, there is a B word, but it's an indecent word, so I'm not going to use it in the English language. If somebody is born out of wedlock, right? In the Sharia, it is haram to have that kind of a relationship out of wedlock. But that child is not held accountable for it, right? So the walad zina, the child that is born out of zina, him leading salah is valid. Why? Because he did not or she did not commit that sin. In Sharia, we don't hold the child accountable for the parent's sins. It's not original sin kind of a thing here, right? As long as their own religious practices are correct, right? But if that person born from zina is a zani himself, or somebody of low moral character for other Islamic, then of course there is an issue. And depending on how bad is how serious the issue would be. But if that person in itself is religious, they're good, then we do not discredit them from leading salah. It's not makruh, it's not haram for them to lead salah as long as their religion is correct. Same is true for the soldier. Now, why the soldier? What is the zina you can understand, right? I mean, right? You would, in a society which is more on fitrah, unlike the one we live in, where I think maybe the majority is awlad of zina nowadays, kuffar, alhamdulillah, not Muslims. But in a regular society, if somebody is born out of zina, you can understand why people would be a little bit like, you know. But the Sharia says, no, he can lead salah. It's not his fault. It wasn't his choice, right? But why the soldier? Why would a soldier be discussed here? I read up on a lot of shuruh and listened to a lot of shuyukh, and my own Shaykh explained this mas'ala. From the very early times of Islam, unfortunately, a lot of soldiers would be involved in immoral or oppressive practices. Right? If we look at many of the great ai like Imam Ahmad, he was arrested. So who arrested him were soldiers, right? Not like regular people didn't go and arrest him. The people loved him. Right? Other ai like An-Nawawi and Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qudama and others later on were also arrested. Who arrested them? Soldiers. Sometimes khulafa and muluk, khalifa or a king, would be oppressive. He would kill people. He would order people to be beaten that didn't deserve it. And who would carry those soldiers' orders out would be soldiers. So if a soldier in his religious practice is correct, then we do not hold that against him. Even if he was forced to do things that he shouldn't have done and so on. But if the soldier was inclined towards those things, like in many Muslim countries today, soldiers and police officers, unfortunately, are very inclined towards bribery. And you take money and you can get to that checkpoint and so on. Then there is karaha, and depending on how serious it is, there could be tahreem if he's a fasiq and things like this. But if a soldier's religious practices are correct, then it is perfectly fine to make salah behind soldiers. And we see many brothers to be in the Muslim militaries that are very good. MashaAllah. Might be going to one of those countries soon, so I got to be careful here, right? Some of them we see as tullab ilm, and we see them as people with beards making salah, not making isbal and reading Quran. Nothing wrong, mashallah, right? But because there are many throughout history that have been inclined towards oppressive practices, the ulama discussed this from a fiqh perspective, that salah behind a soldier whose religion is good is perfectly fine. It's not makruh, it's not haram. But soldiers that may be inclined towards oppressive tactics and so on, then there would be karaha, and it could lead to tahreem depending on what they do. Tayyib. I think we'll stop for today. We'll stop for today, inshallah. We only have a little bit left, but we'll stop. Inshallah, we'll pick it up here. Quickly, if anybody has questions. Somebody shaves, then this is a fasiq. Either it's fisq. The salah behind them, depending on some khilaf between ulama and madahib, would be correct, right? But it's definitely not preferred. Right? So if you have somebody who knows maybe less Quran but doesn't shave, then it's better to put that person forward. But if there is somebody who has a beard and they don't know Al-Fatiha correctly, and then you have a qari that doesn't have a beard, then in that case you put the qari forward.
Are you allowed to line up your beard?
So,
like trim it up, not the whole thing, but are you allowed to trim it, line up?
So you're lining up the beard from the hair that is unusual for the beard, meaning it's up on your cheeks. You see this area here? That is permissible. Or beard that goes under on your neck. Like, alhamdulillah, I don't have that here, but if I had hair here, that would be permissible. But the beard here should be left. No trim it, don't just leave it. You can trim it past the fist. If you go past the fist, there is permissibility, not preferred. Preferred thing, let it go. Unless you start tripping on it or something. Then come talk to me. Right? But there are people like that. I mean, we read this in fiqh books. There are people who would trip on their beard when they would get up. And the ulama would give them jawaz, because there's a danger of harm and things, right? But regularly the beard should be left. But if somebody, like let's say you have a job interview and you don't want to go in, mashallah, with the beard down to your navel and things, khalas, if you trim at a fist, because this has been proven from multiple sahaba, there is jawaz, it's permissible. But it is not preferred. You have to obey your parents in only what is good and right. So if your parents tell you go do zina, you do not obey them. Your parents tell you shave the beard, you don't obey them. Parents tell you drink alcohol, you don't obey them. They tell you, I don't know, right? You get the point, right? But if they tell you go give me some water, yes, of course obey them. They tell you go make salah, of course obey them. If they tell you let's go for umrah, of course obey them, right? If they tell you in the middle of the night go take the trash out, obey them, right? It's mubah things or mustahab, but not in haram. So that.
Extension of the beard question. I know absolutely. So if it is makruh,
we didn't say it's makruh, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we don't have any sahih hadith of him trimming his beard. There's a hadith in a Tirmidhi, but it's extremely makruh. When you don't mention the size and things. Jamhur of Sahaba didn't do it, right? Like majority of the Sahaba, like Ali radiyallahu anhu, so on, they didn't do it. They had very large beards. And if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not do it, and the majority of Sahaba do it, this is the best way. But because some of the Sahaba did do it and nobody forbid them from it, we say that it's jawaz, permissibility, right? But awla, what's preferred, the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself did things to show jawaz, to show permissibility, but not preference, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam trim the beard, let the beard grow. Trim the mustache, let the beard grow, right? So khalas, that's the best. But, like I said, to have a balance, we show there is permissibility in certain things. Some of the ulama went to an extreme, they said it's wajib to trim. Obviously that's wrong. In our countries, Hanafiya, wajib, trim at a fist. Yeah. Also, obviously that's wrong. Some of the A'immah said it's preferred to trim it. That's also wrong, right? Because some of the A'immah said, like many of my own teachers, that it's haram to trim it at all, right? But we think, because we love the dalil more than even the aqwal of our own shuyukh, because some of the Sahaba did it, we cannot say that there is, this is tahreem, right? But because not the Jamhur of the Sahaba, because not from Rasulullah, we say it's not awla, it's not preferred, but it's jaiz. There is khilaf ulama on this issue for less than a fist, but we don't see dalil for it. The only dalil we see is past the fist.
During the talk, you said that there's like a man of unsafe religion and they're not knowing
if they're alone, then it's karaha.
What's the solution? Do they pray separately?
Pray separately.
And then what if there's like multiple? Would it be shown right then or still wrong?
If there is a mahram for the woman there, then it would be jaiz. Right? If there is no mahram for the woman there, then there is still problematic. Right?
So then, the brothers of prayer alone, sisters of prayer alone, correct?
Unless there is large groups of them. Right? If there is a large group of men and a large group of women, then there is jawaz, right? But or if there's a barrier, or they're in separate rooms, or in those situations, right? Yeah, but the issue gets to be when the most serious of issues is when there's just one guy and one girl. Shaving the mustache with a blade, there is khilaf ulama. Imam Malik considered a bid'ah. He even ordered the one who do it to be beaten. Right? But like the Hanafiya and others, they allowed it. Because we don't see a dalil to show tahreem, we say that it is permissible. But it's not the best way. Because if you look at most of the Sahaba, they would trim, not shave. Right? We don't see halaq, of the shaving of the mustache, right? Qasr. And Abdullah ibn Umar, for example, he would trim it so you could see the skin underneath the hair. He would trim it close. Umar ibn Khattab would trim it where it would still be a good amount of hair. And when he saw somebody with a mustache that went over his shoulder, over the lip, he would have a miswak brought and he would cut so that it would be not going over the lip, right? So this means that even a thicker mustache that doesn't go over the lip is jaiz, it's permissible. But the best thing is to trim it, not shave it. Maliki ulama would take a different view, but because we don't see any adilla for tahreem for it, we see that shorten the mustache could include shaving, right? So we say it's hard to say it's bid'ah, but I personally wouldn't do it. Trim away, don't shave. Go ahead. Umar Radiyan used to twist the ends of the mustache. We cannot say it's Sunnah Nabawiyah, like Rasulullah didn't do it, but because Rasulullah said, Alaykum bis sunnati wa sunnati khulafa rashidin al-mahdiin, if somebody did it, there's no problem, inshallah. But again, that should not go over your, not mustache that goes over your lip. This is just the ends of the mustache. Sabilain here can also be trimmed. Hadith. Dr. Saab, the last one is for you because you're so special to us. Hayyakum Allah.
I'm really happy. You say use half cup of 5 hours as well as you know this. And I know many people, and I'm sure you know people in some countries, they are considered really good people. They practice, they do namaz and everything, but they don't know the meaning of Surah Fatiha. So this is so common, as I know.
Yeah.
People pray 5 times everything they do, but and they even leave Salah, but they don't know the meaning of Surah Fatiha.
Yeah, I mean, not knowing the meaning of Al-Fatiha is a calamity. And it's very sad. Something we use in every one of our salawat, and every nafal, every fard. Yani something we open the Quran and read, and so many adhkar and ruqya we use Al-Fatiha. Not knowing the meaning is something horrible. But if they recite it correctly, the salah is valid. Salah is valid. But how sad is it that the imam of a people doesn't know the meaning of Al-Fatiha? Like, where is their Islam? Where is their ahkam? What benefit are they getting from the Quran? So we hope that Imma and ulama and even the awam learn the meanings of at least the Quran they use in their salah, right? Or the adhkar in salah. How many people don't know the meaning of tashahhud? At-tahiyatu lillahi. I've talked to ulama, people who are muftis, and you ask them a question about the tashahhud, they don't know the meaning of it. Very sad. May Allah protect us.